I'm not addressing the bigots. What I'm addressing is the well of people who are angry and frustrated and who want change and who feel ignored.
Hello and welcome to Political Thinking. If we fail to deal with this crisis, we'll draw more people down a path that starts with anger and ends in hatred. So said my guest on Political Thinking this week, Home Secretary Shabana Mahmood, as she unveiled a package of reforms designed to combat what she calls illegal migration, which she says is tearing our country apart. Mahmood, the daughter of Pakistani immigrants and a devout Muslim, says change is needed in part because a country without secure borders is a less safe country for those who look like me. Shabana Mahmood, Home Secretary, welcome back to Political Thinking.
Thank you.
There's some phrases I really want to unpack there because I want to start by trying to understand this journey you've been on towards a tougher approach on migration. But I want to start with words you used in the House of Commons. Words that you were asked to apologise for by the Deputy Speaker. Words I am not permitted to repeat on air under BBC guidelines. But I'm sure you did it deliberately. You wanted people to hear, I think, is this right, the sort of abuse that you get.
Yes, I did, but it was actually less about me in that moment and more that I was responding to the Liberal Democrat spokesperson at the time, but I had a similar comment from others during the course of the debate in Parliament, which was to say that I was adopting far-right talking points, that there wasn't this problem in our country, that even acknowledging or suggesting there was somehow a failure on my part. And I just really wanted to lance that boil because I think that that assertion comes from a place of privilege, which is a place where someone doesn't have to walk through their life in this country and ever hear themselves told to F off home. And I just really wanted to challenge that because it is the direct opposite of why I am dealing with these issues. It's my job. I'm the Home Secretary. But I think that telling the truth about what the scale of a problem is the first step you have to take before you can think about what the correct solutions are. And it disappointed me very much that so many people in the House, they're still a minority, but, you know, they were pretty vocal, were wanting to suggest there wasn't a problem at all. It flies in the face of every experience that I have, my family has, and in fact that my constituents have as well.
That they are called what?
I mean, I half smiled when you said that you'd get in trouble for saying that word here on the BBC. I'm going to get in trouble from my mother, who does not like me swearing. And of everything she saw on Monday, my parents were very proud of me, but my mum said, please don't swear. So, but she knows that it's a swear word I am on the receiving end of. I don't pay attention to social media, actually, but there is a ton of abuse that comes in my direction, not just from anonymous accounts every day, but even worse, named people in the real world who email me and write to me and tell me. And if I didn't have police officers as part of my security detail these days, I'm sure many of those would come up to my face and say it too.
People would shout that abuse, effing P word, in your face.
Yes, and it has happened more in recent times to not just myself, but close family members. I worry about headscarf wearing women in my family in particular. I'm not alone in that. Every Muslim I know these days worries a lot more about vocal racism being shouted at them in the street.
So it's got worse, because last time you were here on Political Thinking, we talked about your upbringing. We talked about the fact that your parents had come from Kashmir, how there'd been a baseball bat in the family shop to deal partly with thieves, but partly with racist abusers who came into the shop. And you said you were called that word back then.
Yes. And, you know, there has always been some racism wherever I've been. In the country, in my childhood, at school, at university, in my working life as well. It's not that it's never been there, but it's never been as much as I feel like it is now.
Why is it worse now?
I think there's more polarisation and division in society. I think that there has been a lot of scapegoating of Muslims in particular. The world changed after 9/11. It became much more acceptable to pin the actions of a minority of people claiming to act in the name of our religion on the whole of us, and all of us being held to account for the actions of those individuals. So that it has been growing over a period of time, but I think at the moment there is deep polarisation. It isn't just in relation to what might be in extremism or terrorism, but it is about the issue of migration itself. The story of who we are as Britain and ethnic minority Britons, I feel, is being contested today in a way it hasn't for a decade or more.
You know what some say, and some said it in the House of Commons. They say you make it worse by saying that the country is divided. You're fueling the divide. You're legitimising the comments that some people make. Spell out your fear if this doesn't work, or if these measures are not taken. You talked about fear turning into hatred. You talked in your conference speech about patriots like me, some of them, who've gone on to something much darker. What did you mean?
Look, I think what starts as resentment, a feeling of unfairness, can over time turn to anger, and anger over time for some people can turn to hate. And when I have been making my comments, so at conference, as you just quoted, or even in the chamber on Monday, I'm not addressing the people that have already crossed every line there is to cross. I'm not addressing the bigots and the people that don't think I'm English, the people that hate me because I'm a Muslim, that don't think I have a right to be in this country. They're not in my mind at all. What I'm addressing is the well of people who are angry and frustrated and who want change and who feel ignored. And I'm addressing them, and I am saying to them, I recognise the thing that's fueling your resentment, that sense of unfairness, is a real thing. So firstly, I'm acknowledging they're not making it up. The bigots haven't got in their head and incepted them into believing a thing that is not true. They believe a thing that is true. I recognise the thing they believe is true. And what I'm saying to them is, I believe we in mainstream politics can speak to the challenge that you are making of us. We can run a better system. And that is why I think it's so important that we win this argument, because if we fail, if everyone in mainstream politics basically either doesn't want to talk about this, doesn't want to address it, or doesn't have the will to come up with the solutions that are needed, then I do think you leave the space for much darker forces.
But here's what worries some people. They often think of Tommy Robinson, Stephen Yaxley Lennon, who tweeted not overt support for you, but he said, "The Overton window has been obliterated. Well done, patriots." In other words, he feels that your announcements are proof that he's winning, because the window of acceptable ideas has been opened to these sorts of measures that would have been unthinkable for the Labour Party a few years ago.
No, I found it so offensive actually in the chamber when people were quoting that particular person at me as this is a person who hates me because I'm a Muslim, who thinks that I'm a lesser kind of human being because I'm a Muslim, and whose followers regularly tweet pictures of me at mosque events where I, of course, as a practicing Muslim woman, wear a headscarf, pictures of me with the word of God in Arabic behind me as a way of inciting hatred towards me. So it's deeply offensive. He knows what he's doing as well. He is setting his people once again after me. But I don't have any truck with anything that an individual like that has to say. But what I refuse to allow to happen is a legitimate discussion to be taken over by forces that are illegitimate. If mainstream politics cannot have a discussion about secure borders and the rules by which people enter this country and the rules by which they must leave, if we cede that territory to the far right, if we show that we are either unable, unwilling, or simply don't have the capacity to even think about the issue properly, and we cede it all to the far right, then we have let our country down.
Reform UK joked that you were kind of applying to join their party. They produced an advert, didn't they, in which they're imagining you in your bedroom with a poster of Nigel Farage on the bedroom wall. They think they're winning.
No, I think it's the direct opposite. I think that comes from insecurity. Reform needs, as a party, Nigel Farage, he's not looking to fix this problem. He's not looking for solutions. He's looking for an issue to exploit. And I think actually it's the direct opposite of what they're suggesting. They're making mischief, but it's me that's living now rent-free in their heads because I'm a politician that's willing to both acknowledge a problem and have the solutions that are needed to fix it. They just need an issue to exploit. And that is what I will deny them with every fibre of my being, because I'm not willing to cede this territory to forces on the extremes or forces that are beyond the pale on the far right.
Now, Nigel Farage is always very clear that Tommy Robinson and his supporters are beyond the pale. He doesn't agree with them. He rejects their attacks on Islam. Do you see them as different? Or do you see them as part of the same broad political movement?
I think I'm sceptical about Nigel Farage's claims about most stuff, including his powers of setting forces, unleashing forces in the country and then claiming to be the only man that can stop them as well. I think those are questions for him to answer, really. My view is that you can't indulge in the occasional dog whistle yourself and then claim to be the man that's holding them all at bay. You know, he doesn't have godlike powers, and I think he's actually quite smart and knows exactly what he's doing. Saying that you're going to rip up indefinite leave to remain for people that have been in our country for decades is a completely beyond the pale position, rejected by the majority of British people, by the way. But it sends a message to those of us who have a British passport but are only one generation born in this country that maybe they're coming for us as well.
You've been clear that what you're trying to do is to say to people massed on the coast in France or people heading to the coast of France, don't think about it. Mm-hmm. You've talked about the WhatsApps that they send each other, those potential asylum seekers, about what's on offer here. If you could write the WhatsApp as a result of the policies you've unveiled, what do you want them to hear?
Do not make that boat crossing. Do not make that journey. Do not pay all of your money to people smugglers and criminals, because that's what those people are. They are criminals. They are not just people smugglers. They indulge in all sorts of other organised crime. These are highly sophisticated organised crime groups. People should not be giving their money to them.
Sure, but they've heard that. They heard that under the last government. Again and again, people say, don't do it. But they say, no. Either we're scared for our lives or we just think we can get a better life. We're prepared to pay. We're prepared to take the risk. So what's new this week as a result of what you've said that might change their calculus? That
the risk is not worth it. And much of what is being sold to people as they make that decision to get on a boat is part of the package that we offer. It's the relative ease with which permanent settlement can be attained. It used to be the family reunification rights, which were very generous compared to our European counterparts, which were temporarily halted by Yvette Cooper when she was my predecessor and retained by me. The ability to melt into the illegal economy and to be able to earn money and to support themselves through illegal working. So there are big gaps in our system, and those are being exploited. They are being sold as part of the package to people so that they get on those boats and make those journeys.
Isn't this too complicated, though? I mean, the Tories had a simple message. Now, you'll tell me it didn't work, but it did work a bit as a deterrent, the Rwanda policy, didn't it? Because it was very simple. You arrive, you won't get to stay here, you might get shipped off to Africa. Now, you'll say it didn't work, the courts didn't allow it to happen and so on, but it seems to me your policy isn't at all simple. It's like, well, this might happen and that might change, and if the courts allow and if we get a vote through Parliament, what changes before next spring when the weather changes and 1,000 people a day might be able to come? What's going to be different that should be on those WhatsApp messages saying, hold on, guys, don't even think about it?
Well, I think it does change the calculus because, firstly, people are being told there's free bed and board available, and we're changing the rules about that. They will be told that they will quickly, if they just wait it out a few years, be able to attain settlement. We're changing the rules on that. The whole of the package at every stage, the journey from coming in this country, waiting too much time to have your claim heard, and whether you're going to get a grant of refugee status or not, and the relative ease with which you can get permanent settlement. I think all of that has been a pull factor. I think it is right that we deal with those pull factors, and the message I'm sending is clear. I am trying to change the calculus in the minds of the people that are about to get on a boat, which is this is the worst way to come to this country. Even if you are granted refugee status, it is a difficult path to settlement. It will be much more difficult, and that I'm doing that deliberately because I do not want people to get on boats and come to this country that way. I also don't want them to overstay their visas and then switch straight into the asylum route, which we know a lot of people do because they know it takes so long that by the time they get a definitive answer on their claim after multiple appeals, they've probably been here so long they'll have accrued enough rights to stay. I'm trying to disadvantage those two groups deliberately because ultimately what I want to do is advantage the people that come here through safe and legal routes, which I want to set up and expand. And those people who come that way will have already been accepted as a refugee out of country. They arrive in country as a refugee. Their path to settlement, their path to building a life in this country will be faster, quicker, more successful. The easier path, the better path. That's what I'm trying to do.
You're shocking some people who are lifelong supporters of a British approach to refuge. Most notably, Lord Dubs, 92 now, came over to this country on the Kinder transport, the son of a Jewish father in Czechoslovakia who survived because of the welcome that Britain gave to him and 680 odd other children. He said to me on the Today programme the other morning, I am worried that Shabana Mahmood is using children as a weapon because you've said that you would be willing to send children and families back home. What do you say to him?
Well, look, I adore Lord Alf Dubs. I think he's a really tremendous human being, and I always listen carefully to what he said, but on this occasion I do disagree with him. Firstly, I would never use children as a weapon. That is not what is happening here. I set out a clear policy that for those people who arrive with their children who are failed asylum seekers, we're not talking about people who have refugee status, we're talking about people who do not have refugee status because they've been through their multiple claims, they've been through the courts, and they have been found not to be asylum seekers, not to be refugees. They've failed in their claim. We have not been removing those people to safe countries.
But you're also talking about people if you change the status of a country, aren't you? Because one of the things you've said is that you would review if a country was now safe. So let's take a Syrian couple who fled Assad's brutal regime, maybe came here on a lorry before many people came here on the boats. They've got a child that they had here, child starting secondary school. You could say Syria's safe now. Assad has gone. Do you say that child, that family, has to go back?
So, well, if I just finish the point on when you have failed asylum-seeking families, I think most of your viewers and your listeners would acknowledge that there is a perverse incentive there to still travel with your children, maybe put your children at danger if you know that we would never, ever remove a family with children when they have failed in their claim. And it is British taxpayers who are footing that bill. And I am sorry to say, if people mind that, but it is true. And I have a responsibility to run a system based on fairness and contribution, and that is what I'm going to do.
Now, what about the Syrian family?
So look, if people come to this country through illegal means, so not through a safe and legal route, but through other means, then I think it is right for us to say that journey is not going to be worth it because the rules that you are going to be subject to are going to be tougher.
In future or now? In other words, could this be retrospective?
From the moment the rules come in, and we will set out all of those changes in legislation.
It's because you praised David Blunkett as Home Secretary you admire, and he said to get these measures through Parliament, it will undoubtedly be necessary to clarify precisely what the status will be of children born in the UK.
We will, and let me just address that. And let me just address that point because I was very clear in the statement as we published it that we will consider the issues relating to children specifically and differently, not just for children of people who've come here, who've been born in this country, but also for those who arrive unaccompanied, where we have another kind of problem. So I will deal with the issues of children separately, and I will set out those plans in due course.
So you accept it's got to be clearer?
I recognise that there is an issue in children, but I was very open about that in the asylum policy statement itself. But it is right that if you're a failed asylum seeker, the fact that you have a child under 18 is not a reason why you should remain here in supported asylum accommodation forevermore.
Central philosophical thing that was the big change from the policies that Alf Dubs loved so much, was the idea that asylum is temporary. Now, just a few minutes ago, you attacked Nigel Farage for putting anybody on notice that maybe one day they would be turfed out of the country. And you worried that people who looked like asylum seekers, in inverted commas, the wrong colour skin, in inverted commas, the wrong faith, wearing a headscarf. Isn't that also true of a policy that says you're only a temporary guest here as an asylum seeker?
I think it's important that we recognise that refugee status, what it means today, is not what it meant when people like Alf and others came to this country. Often, the people who claim asylum in this country, when they reach our shores, are doing so having gone through multiple safe countries in Europe before they came here. I think it's right that I say, if you're going to come in this way, we will still, if we find you to be a refugee, provide you with protection. You have sanctuary here, but it is not permanent, it is temporary. That is my way of signalling to people looking to get on a boat or overstay their visa. That is the very worst way to try and get to this country or to remain in this country. Safe and legal routes are the best way to come to this country, and that life and that path to settlement will be easier and quicker. So I am deliberately trying to show the difference because I want to change the calculus of the people that are making these decisions.
And by trying to change the calculus, you're saying asylum is temporary, not permanent. You're saying we may take some of your money away. We may bribe you to go back home. We may send you abroad with your children, even if they brought here. Wouldn't that be neatly summed up by the phrase hostile environment?
I think we're trying to show that there are ways to seek refuge and sanctuary in this country that we find acceptable because we can control them and we can do them in a way that unlocks the full...
It's hostile, though, isn't it? That was the phrase Theresa May used and was condemned by Labour people.
Look, I think we're a generous people, and I am deliberately trying to send a message: don't get on a boat. It is a dangerous thing to do. It puts your life at risk, but it also makes a lot of very bad people richer than they need to be.
But Shabana Mahmood, you're the same person as a backbencher who called for a general amnesty for illegal immigrants. You signed a letter urging the Prime Minister, Boris Johnson at the time, to halt the deportation of 50 Jamaican people. He visited a Greek refugee camp in 2015 and wrote, "You would run, I would run, they're running, we must do our part to help them."
I still want to do that.
Do you accept you've been on quite a journey?
No, because I still believe in sanctuary. I believe in helping people. I believe in our country playing a part to offer refuge to people. But the way to do that is not to see the British Navy effectively acting as a taxi service across the Channel, saving lives. It's not to make people smugglers, rich people indeed. That is absolutely the wrong way to come to this country. But I do want to create those safe and legal routes. I've already set out plans for community sponsorship, for talented students, for skilled workers. I want them to have a future in this country, and I want my country to play its part. And I know our people are generous enough to want to do that. But that generosity comes at a price. If you cannot secure your own border, then you cannot get the public consent that is necessary for either having an asylum system at all or ever offering safe and legal passage into this country. I want to retain that, and that is why we need stronger measures in order to secure our border.
It's quite an agenda you've got since changing jobs as Justice Secretary and becoming Home Secretary. You sure Keir Starmer agrees with any of this?
Well, he made me Home Secretary and he does know what I think. So
he's not said a word about it all week. The only thing he said during this week, while you're out there fighting, is one answer to a obviously planted question from the Whips. I've been around long enough, I know, to which he picked up his paper and read. Why doesn't he talk about this?
We discussed it at Cabinet on Tuesday. I appreciate there's no cameras there, so it wasn't maybe captured for everyone to see. Is he nervous
since he did that Island of Strangers speech, in which he said he regretted the phrase, he changed his mind?
He was fulsome in his support for the agenda that I've laid out with the whole of the Cabinet.
Sure, he won't change his mind, because he changes his mind quite a lot, doesn't he?
I had a lot of support from all of my colleagues in Cabinet and the Prime Minister directly himself. And these are plans, by the way, that I discussed with him on a number of occasions. I took him through the detail. We have batted this around together for a while. It has his full sign-off, and it is my job at the end of the day to go out there and make the argument.
Yeah, his people this week were not talking about your plans. They were talking about plots against Keir Starmer. How have we got to this stage?
Gosh, well, I've been asked this question a lot over the last few days, just by function of doing quite a few interviews about the asylum policy statement. And it's just mortifying every time I have to answer it, if I'm completely honest. Nobody covered themselves in glory at the beginning tail end of last week, beginning of this one. It's just embarrassing. I think I've said everything I can say here, which is I was going to swear then, actually. I shouldn't. I'll get in real trouble from my mind. No, well, I know, worse than the speaker, my mother's going to be very upset.
I'll say effing. What's the end of the phrase? If effing
it's just a car crash. It was a total car crash from start to finish. It's mortifying talking about it still. And I think it's deeply, it's embarrassing. It was embarrassing for the Prime Minister because then he's got to obviously sort it out and he shouldn't be put in that position, and it's not how he does his politics. But I really do hope...
A growing number think the way to sort it out is put them out of their misery. He doesn't like being Prime Minister. It doesn't appear to like being Prime Minister. A lot of his colleagues don't want him to be Prime Minister. They think, well, let's just sort it out, for goodness sake.
You're just being mischievous now, Nick, as you well know.
Perish the thought.
As you well know. I think it put the Prime Minister in a horribly embarrassing position. But I do think that one of the functions of the humiliation of what happened over those few days and the madness of it all is, I just hope that the humiliation means that the individuals responsible, they know who they are, just never ever put in a repeat performance, because that's the main thing. We have to draw a line under it and get on with our jobs.
Now, the last time we spoke here, we ended with you talking very movingly, I think, about your faith and what it meant to you, and that sense that you regard it as a gift that you have qualities and a duty to do something with those qualities. You know, at the end of this week, there are plenty in your own party, plenty outside, who are saying, they're only doing this because of the opinion polls. They're only interested in doing this because they're scared of Nigel Farage. They're only doing it to save their skins. Are you saying it's something to do with that gift and what you think is your responsibility?
I'm in this role because I believe in public service, and I am called to public service because of my faith and because I see life as a test, and I have been granted many privileges by God in my life. And one day, before God, I will have to account for how I used the privileges he granted me in this life. And that's why I chose to become a politician. My life dream was actually to be a barrister, as I think we might have discussed before, but I became a politician because I was called to public service, and particularly public service of the place I grew up in, the people I represent in Parliament. The reason I get so passionate about it, and it means so much to me, is because the people I represent are the people I grew up with. Lots of kids I went to school with, people whose mums and dads I know, who watched me since I was a little girl, they are my constituents today. It is a very unique privilege in politics to be able to represent your own people, your own home turf in Parliament. It's why I made the switch from law into politics. And it's the combination of those two things, my faith, the fact that God granted me the privilege of representing my own community in Parliament. That is the reason why I care so much, but also because I'm a British Muslim. Like, the other great gift of my life is I was born in this country, and I have all of the privileges of being a British citizen. And when I can see that there is an issue that is tearing my country apart, that is setting people against one another, that is now allowing our story of who we are and the story of belonging of millions of multi-ethnic Brits in this country to be contested in a way it hasn't been before. It is a duty to stand up to that, to find answers, and to show people there is a different way and that you can bring the country together. Honestly, nothing matters more to me, and I said this in the House, and I say it again, not even winning a general election, because to me this is something bigger and deeper than that. It's public service. It's an act of faith on my part. It's service of the people I love and have grown up with and have the privilege of representing. And it's a love of country too. Let the election be what it will be, because the people will decide that in whichever years ahead it is. Other parties will decide how they react. If you start with that, you end up doing the wrong thing for the wrong reasons. And that is the direct opposite of how I think about life and how I think about politics.
Shabana Mahmood, thanks for joining me on Political Thinking.
Thank you.